G'day guys, hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today I wanted to try and explore a little bit more of the psychological side of health and well-being. And so today we're exploring addiction. And so what addiction actually is it's a uncontrollable habit that people have. This can apply to many different things. Usually the desire for a dopamine fix is how addictions usually occur. There are usually two main types of addiction towards substance, so substance addiction, and behavioral addiction. But today we're just looking at substance addiction as it's more applicable to a younger audience, as people my age are much more likely to experience substance addiction throughout their lives, their teenage years. So recently there has been such a massive rise becoming addicted to new implications of different substances, such as Zins or Snus, which are these nicotine pouches that you chuck in your gums to get a fix for nicotine. And vapes. Obviously, vapes have become massive over the past 3-4 years. Everyone's been using them, especially Australia and America. They're really big around here. There are multiple parts of the brain that are associated with addiction. Them being the prefrontal cortex, the cerebellum, the brainstem, and the limbic system. We'll look over those and how they are implicated into different types of substances and how those different substances affect types of the brain. But when we look at stimulus in addiction and what's the peak of dopamine and what happens after that peak, it becomes very obvious why people become addicted. For example, we'll have a look at cocaine. So, diving right into it with a hard-hitting mainstream drug. Cocaine, people crave cocaine for its dopamine peak and its dopamine hit and the increased levels of alertness and the euphoric feeling, and etc. But the stimulus of these cravings is to put it simply, is just the line of cocaine. So the line of cocaine is the stimulus that people crave. So as soon as they snort, smoked, or worst case scenario, they inject the crack cocaine into a vein, into their bloodstream. Once they do any one of those things to indulge in cocaine, their dopamine drastically increases almost immediately to go to a very high peak. And when going to this very high peak, our it's hard to pronounce, mesocortical system doesn't have any time to learn anything about the stimulus that they're actually getting. So the mesocortical system is a network of neurons in your brain that is sensitive to the neurotransmitters of dopamine. So when you get a dopamine fix, your mesocortical system is used to learn about how that dopamine fix happened, how long it took, what type of feeling it gives you. And so with cocaine, your body doesn't get enough time, this system doesn't get enough time to learn anything about that. And instead, all it knows is cocaine equals high dopamine hit, which then equals a feeling of euphoria, feeling of energy. You become energetic, you become super alert, etc. Different types of things that happen with that. But this does reconstruct the baseline of your dopamine tolerance. Since this reconstructs your dopamine baseline, and this dopamine hit is much quicker, talking about cocaine, it's much quicker. It therefore is way more desirable compared to the dopamine hit that you get from doing an ice bath, going on a long run, doing something where the dopamine hit comes from over a long period of time. Maybe if it's making a training plan or getting that promotion from your job, that dopamine fix is less desirable than what you get from cocaine, because it takes way too much effort and way too long, and your brain automatically thinks, I don't care about, getting dopamine fix from that. It takes too long. I want to feel good now. So instead they opt for the short-term dopamine fix. That in this case we're talking about is cocaine. But the gap between the desire and the effect, which the effect being the rewarding feeling that you get from dopamine, is, so put an example, the gap between the desire of cocaine and then the desire of wanting it and then taking it, and the gap between the effect that happens, that big spike that you get from having cocaine, that correlates to the desirability and the chances of you taking that sort of substance for your dopamine fix. And if we want to put this into terms of a graph, say, when you first intake it is here and it goes by in minutes, the steeper the dopamine hit and the higher the hit of dopamine, the higher the dopamine baseline will be for you over time. Say you have a line of coke, your dopamine hit goes super high straight away, super quick, so it's steep. It'll drop just as steep, but the next time you have cocaine, your baseline of dopamine is much higher. So that means you need more of the stimulant in order to have the same sort of dopamine hit. This can then cause a lack of pleasure, meaning you're more likely to take, over time, you're more likely to take less pleasure from receiving that stimulus. So what I said before is you're less likely to get the amount of pleasure that you did from the first time you took cocaine compared to the 5th time. So the 5th time you might need to take even more cocaine than you did the first, just to feel that euphoric feeling that you did the first time. This can then cause an increase in crave to want more and more over time, and this overall just causes you to become addicted. Our next one, I'm only going over a couple major substances that in young adults and adolescents are really prevalent. So the next one being nicotine. So nicotine, just like dopamine, just like cocaine, in simple terms, its main role as a stimulant and as a substance is to increase your dopamine neurotransmitters. So nicotine gives more of a relaxed feeling for most people compared to cocaine, where you're super energetic. The positive effects of nicotine is that most individuals that intake or have consumption at relative to their tolerance levels can give them a feeling of pleasure, calmness, increased concentration, and alertness. So people that know their nicotine tolerance, for example, a snus, will pop one in whilst they're studying, and they'll feel much more alert and focused, and they'll be able to get way more work done than they would regularly. This is why a lot of the time you'll see soccer players and professional athletes, especially now, recently, they will be taking snus or, have some sort of nicotine intake before a game. A famous one recently has been of Aaron Ramsdale or Mbappe. When Mbappe is walking down the line or the locker room, he pops one into the top of his gums straight away before the warm-up. And Aaron Ramsdale, before a game, he just puts his hands over his mouth and secretly tries to take out his snus, which makes sense because having increased alertness and focus within a soccer game, especially as a goalkeeper, is very important, because the whole entire scoreboard really relies on them as their last line of defense. So recently, since there has been such a high availability of nicotine for adolescents, such as snus or Zyn, whatever you want to call it, and vapes, it has increased the amount of people in Australia that are intaking nicotine, obviously. Just to put it in perspective, the average consumption of nicotine in Australia decreased between 2017 and 2019, but had a drastic increase in 2020. The estimated consumption in the first half of 2020 was significantly higher at 30%, higher than the previous period, so that being the 2017-2019. But since then, it's even more likely that since the study was done, the amount or the percentage of nicotine intake within Australia has increased, beyond what anyone even thought. As It's become so much more available to younger people, people even low as 13. Like in Queensland, there were news reports of 12-year-olds and 8-year-olds using and selling vapes, and people in year 7 in high school, going into the locker room, into the bathrooms, and just having a hit before they, go into class or go through the changeover period, and just go into the bathroom and have a hit. So having it so available at such a young age increases the intake drastically. And nicotine is, it's on the rise to almost overtake alcohol as being a super high abusive substance. But speaking of alcohol, is actually the next substance that we're going to talk about, as alcohol is the most commonly abused substance for people that are of age, most likely. Even though people under the age of whatever country you're in Australia, it's 18, America's 21. A lot of the time, people in America are more likely to drink underage and overconsume the amount of alcohol they actually are able, like their tolerance can handle. And that's because in America, their legal age is way higher. In Australia, we're less likely to drink at a younger age at a more irresponsible level. So if you put a 17-year-old from America and a 17-year-old from Australia, the likelihood that the 17-year-old from Australia is going to consume a more irresponsible level of alcohol compared to the American is much less likely, as the Australian, just in terms of our culture, has been brought up with alcohol, and not to say that they know their tolerance, they're more likely to know their tolerance, but young Australians they're already thinking like, oh, I'm already turning 18, like there's nothing to worry about. Whereas Americans who have to wait to 21 years old get too, trigger happy, and they want to just get fucked up every night. To put it in perspective, the ABS, or I think it's the Australian Bureau, I just butchered that, but something, is like a government organisation for Australia. Okay, so just to put it in perspective, the ABS reported that in 2022, 26.8% or 1 in 4 adults exceeded the Australian adult alcohol guideline in 2022. Males were also more likely than females to exceed the guidelines, males being 35.8% compared to 18.1% of females. More than 1 in 3 or 36.1% of young adults aged 18 to 24 years exceeded the guideline. As well as in the USA, there has been an 80% increase in alcohol use disorder among women in the last 30 years, which is fucking ridiculous. That's probably due to, so there's so many different pressures and so many different reasons as to why alcohol consumption has increased so much, as there's not just one clear answer as to why people become addicted to alcohol. It can be down to so many reasons. One of them being, it can be down to genetics, behavioral factors, psychological factors, psychological distress, anxiety and depression. Since anxiety and depression is already on the rise as of recently due to maybe like social media and all that stuff, it's probably a clear reason as to why women over the past 30 years have increased alcohol use disorder by 80%. The distress that comes from social media, the pressures, the standards that they believe come from it, it's clear reasons as to why the alcohol use disorder has increased in the USA so high. But the most common reasons, I believe, as to why alcohol use disorder becomes so prevalent and so common is due to social pressures, such as going out for casual drinks, birthdays, going out for dinner, mates just wanting to go out clubbing, and other celebrations. As with younger people, their prefrontal cortex is underdeveloped and have extra unconnected synapses in the area where the risk assessment occurs in the brain. So unconnected synapses in the areas where risk assessment occurs. So younger people are more impressionable. They're more likely to drink through peer pressure, as the prefrontal cortex relates to basic cognitive functioning, as it's more underdeveloped. People of a young age don't have as strong as of ability to say, no, I'm not going to drink. That's not good for me. And we're talking about really young, impressionable ages, 14 to 16 or 17. It's harder for them to say, no, I don't want to do this, or no, like, I just don't want to drink tonight. Sorry about that. It's hard for them to do that. They fall under peer pressure so much hard, as, the frontal cortex is what controls peer pressure, or, basic cognitive and motor functioning. And the way that alcohol works is that once it's consumed, the sensations tend to affect the bodies within just a few minutes, and immediately affects the frontal cortex, which I just said before, is the part of the brain that controls all of your body's motor skills, judgment, and maintaining social appropriateness. So, a common reason why people drink alcohol is because you tend to become a lot more outspoken than you usually would be, and become more sluggish as well. So that's due to your motor skills decreasing through the amount of alcohol consumption, because it affects your frontal cortex. And with becoming more outspoken, it's because your social appropriateness decreases. So you don't care as much when you're drunk, because you think, oh, why not? Whereas when you're sober, you're way more conserved and way more thoughtful as to what's going to happen after I do this. Whereas when you're drunk or when you're tipsy, you're like, oh, I may as well just do it. Like, why not? That's why your best mate who can't chat to a girl sober one-on-one, when they get a drop of alcohol, they turn into bloody Ryan Gosling from Crazy Stupid Love. Like, that's what happens, because your frontal cortex, it doesn't shut down, but it just stuffs up or decreases all the other stuff that it controls. And a lot of people tend to reminisce on how free they felt as well when they had alcohol the night before, and how they were a more confident version of themselves. And this is the main cause of why people tend to drink more and more at social occasions, because they have that one beer and then they're like, may as well go talk to this bloke, or may as well introduce myself to these people. And your conversations are more free-flowing. You're able to build on top of conversations and a bunch of other stuff. And as well, with the alcohol consumption in Australia, as I said before, the culture in Australia is that we're more likely to drink at a younger age, because we're so much more exposed to it. As I grew up with my dad, drinking beer around me like all the time. Mum, still to this day has a couple wines, like when she gets home from work or at night. And it's just normalized here. So we're more likely to have alcohol at such a younger age, because of how normal it is for our parents to have casual beers and just drink before they go to bed in a non-addictive way and a non-harmful way. They just have alcohol more casually than, what people from more sober areas or sober countries would believe. That there brings us to the end of our episode today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this different type of episode. I want to get more in depth, as I said before, into the psychological factors that can affect our different types of health and well-being. Today was more focused around mental health and well-being. I hope you guys really did all enjoy it. I'd like to say thank you guys so much for the support on the last episode. It was really surprising. Thank you again for Campbell coming on to that episode. The amount of support that I got from that episode started showing up at school, actually, just to sidetrack a little bit. But I was just walking into the Year 12 area, and my English teacher, I won't say who, just for his own privacy reasons, but he came up to me and he just gave me a tap on the arm and said, "Charlie, I love the podcast. I listened to the music dependency episode and I actually really loved it. Like, it's so for me." And just shocked me so much. I thought it was unreal that not just the confidence that he had to come up to me and say that, but shows how much you guys are actually enjoying these episodes and how it's actually impacting people in a positive way. And I actually really do appreciate it, like from the bottom of my heart. Trying to be so cringe, but it really is like unbelievable how much positive feedback I've gotten on all these episodes that I've filmed so far. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to share on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever you please, LinkedIn, I don't really care, Hotmail, literally anything. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Again, feel free, just, if you see me in person, suggest a type of episode or topic you want me to talk about, or a person that you reckon I should have on, something that interests you guys, because this is all for your entertainment and for my enjoyment to make them. So I want to start doing topics that you guys really do enjoy learning about or listening to. But yeah, enough yabbering on from me, if that's even a word, bloody hell. But yeah, hope you guys all have a nice day and hope you enjoy this episode, guys.